Hi there, it's Dina with the Realize Foundation, and I'm here with Chad Gaines, who's writing in Scars to Stars Volume 3. Welcome, Chad. I'm
Hi,
so glad to
Dana.
have you here.
Happy to be here today. Wow, happy to be here today and to be involved with Scars from Stars and have a chapter is very exciting because I wrote this chapter a little different than I have in previous as well as my book. This one is totally different. This is something I always wanted to share, but I've never put it in any books or blogs or anything else. And I told it in a way that I think a lot of people can relate to it and also understand how it's written.
That's great. Well, for people that might be listening that don't know anything about you, will you tell us a little more about the content of what the chapter's about without giving it all
The
away?
con I like that. I just wrote my own personal story based on my life, and my book is being turned into a movie right now. So the chapter is actually based on my life, based on some of the trauma that I went through, but also the mindsets of how trauma and PTSD changes the mind and the way we think and the way it affects our relationships and finances and just everything. It just totally affected my whole life as a man and now as a father to my 8-year-old daughter. It's really affected me in so many different ways that I look at the world differently and I look at people differently and I look at even my schedule and anxiety and everything that I go through every day differently because now I know the reason why it's happening and why it's happened in the past and how it's affected me so much. So I also am a coach based on that to help people get through trauma and PTSD with simple messages. I'm just here for the rest of my days that I have to help people not be so afraid.
Yeah, and so they know they're not alone as well, because I think a lot of times when we have depression or PTSD or anxiety or any of that, that we feel like we're the only one, and that is
Absolutely.
so not true.
I thought that for so many years of my life because I thought like, why am I getting with certain people in relationships and they're toxic and then I self-sabotage it and run off and don't want, and all this stuff. And then I come to realize, well, maybe it's about my choices that I'm making based on the effects of PTSD and those things. And I found that to be very true, but at a high loss when it came to finances, relationships, and opportunities that I passed by because I was so scared and all those things that I it was for me it was just like I woke up one morning and 50 years old just decided like, okay, I can relate to a lot of this stuff that happened to me and why it's affected me. Now that I recognize that, now what? I'm gonna have to deal with it. It's not gonna go away. There's no cure for PTSD. Um, you can manage it. You can also fake it, like I have personally, where no one knew what was going on, and inside I was just terrified and dying and scared, and like that 7-year-old boy that was abused all over again.
Yeah, yeah. I am reading your book. I'm not done with it, but I'm reading it, and it's yeah. I won't give any of that away either. But I want.
Yeah, I know it's very difficult for some people to read. I've got that a lot lately. And just like I tell everybody else that gets my book, just one page at a time because some of it is
Mhm.
hard to handle, some of it is graphic, and so I just want you to, you know, one
Mhm.
one page at a time, and I'm sure this book will be the same, outstanding with all these amazing authors and everybody that brings value to this message and this book. And
Yeah.
I'm just thankful to be a part of this.
Well, we're thankful that you are part of it. And I think that it's a way, for anyone that doesn't know my story. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I'm just going to say that for 23 years I was silent about a suicide attempt. And when during all of those years, I never came across a person, a website, any information that made me feel like it was okay to speak up
Right.
or to talk about it. And I didn't really want to go to therapy. I had done that once or twice, but it just wasn't the right thing for me. And so if I could have picked up a book or listened to a podcast, even though we didn't have podcasts back then in like
Right.
the 90s, um, if I could have somehow read something or been able to connect with somebody that had been through what I had been through on a personal level that wasn't public, I think I would have. And I think that's what our books do for people. They can pick it up, and there's, you know, somewhere between 18 and 20 stories in our books that are different, and people can relate to at least a couple of them, probably more, because it's all about people just struggling through something in their life and how they overcame it. And they're all different stories, from abuse and addiction and mental health and suicide to infertility and all kinds of things. And so I can't even express how much feedback and notes and people have passed messages back to me about how much it either helped them or they gave the book to somebody and then it helped that person. And so it's been a really cool project to see how this shows up in the world.
I think it is very important for the world, this book itself, because there are so many different stories in it. And if you have never been through anything like this, you probably know somebody that has. That's the important thing about all these messages. Like, if you're not even a reader, get a copy to pass along to somebody, because you either know somebody that has been affected by trauma or these things that we talk about in the book, or you're one of them yourself. And this just needs to be spread around the world. This is a great book. It's a great message with all these different authors in it from all over the place, different backgrounds of life, and it's just some great passionate stories that we need at least here in the United States right now. We need this. We need this. We crave this, and we definitely we just need it. We're in desperate need of something like this. We are. I can't say that enough. It's the
It's
truth.
It's very true. I think the whole world is in need of it, and we do have somebody from the UK who wrote in this book for sure. We've had other people in other countries write in some of our first two books, but yeah, and I think it's we've even had people buy dozens of them and donate them to libraries and different things like that, which is really cool. And we hope that one day we'll be able to raise enough money to do that on a larger scale to like homeless shelters or you know um, addiction facilities and all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask you if you might share a couple tips on how you manage your PTSD in case somebody it could help.
Um, to answer your question truthfully, I think everybody has to adjust to what works for them.
Mhm.
Because when it comes to this and the effects that I've had personally, there's no magic bullet or secret message that I can give to you. But I will tell you that what everybody has in common is you either recognize what your triggers are or you don't. And for
Mhm.
years, I didn't. I didn't realize, like, why is this getting me so upset? Why am I such a jealous person in my relationships? Why do I, instead of going out, why do I like to be by myself? Why do I listen to music 24 hours a day? All those things were like really bothering me, but also excited to figure out like what's going on. And I could never share that to anybody because I was embarrassed because I
Yeah.
would see everybody else that come from, structured families, and I just couldn't make it out. Like, oh wait, my family wasn't the typical family of the 80s, and there's a reason why my dad was an alcoholic, and uh, my mother became a murderer in our home. And I'm asked that question quite a lot, but I think the main thing that we all can relate to is what our triggers are. That's the first thing I talk about in my coaching programs is, what are your triggers? Do you know what they are? Because for me, my triggers are much different than a person that went through similar but different. Also has a lot to do with the years that they went through it. Some people have experienced that trauma short term that affects them in a different way than somebody like my situation that was 12, 15 years old, and the trauma was still going on until I was shoved out into the street to take care of myself at 15. But those things can be managed. They definitely can be managed. I talk about this every single day of my life now. And it's about recognizing your triggers and having a routine that works for you. My routines are really strange, but they work for me. My wife knows, hey, in the morning at this time, I need my Starbucks. If I can't go from that to transition into lunch, honestly, because that's my routine. That's what I've had in my life that works for me. Certain musics. I know at a certain time when my wife is here working at her desk here in the bedroom, that she knows from this time to this time, Chad's listening to his music, because I need that to get ready for a podcast or to keep going. Those are things that encourage me, because music has always been a big part of my life. It's the only thing that I always tell everybody that's never left me or never abandoned me in my life is music. So I hold on to that dearly. And then the third thing that I think is, you have if you come from trauma that was related to your childhood, I think it's very important to find a good memory of something you really treasured during that time that your trauma was going on. Mine was several different things: baseball cards, Matchbox cards, cars, and Star Wars figures. When I was going through the toughest years of my life that I was promised that I would never live. On a daily basis, I'm going to kill you. Exact words, if I want to be blunt here. But what I found is, in those three things: recognizing my triggers, uh, having my alone time, even if it's for 1 hour a day and I'm in the same room. You've got to have your time. That's very important. I don't care if you're 30 years old or 50 like me. And then the third thing is, find a good memory or even a possession that you had when that trauma was going on that you like, that helped you get through. And I suggest getting it back. I don't care if you're 40 or 50 like me. I went on eBay and found a Matchbox car that I keep right here by my desk every single day with my other Matchbox car. I'm 50 years old, but I do that. And this is why I do that, because those exact same cars, when I was 7 years old, I was instructed by my mother to go break them with a hammer. That was my punishment when I would get in trouble. I had to break my own toys in front of her. So that was like this, not a revenge, but it was more like a redemption of my life and taking back what was important to me. So those are the three brief things that I coach about, and those are just great tips for trauma or PTSD or anything that you've ever been through greatly in your life. Those things are very important. You can find all the toys that you grew up with on eBay still. It helps me to see that every single day. I have it right here on top of a book right on my desk to remind me, like, yes, she took that away, but yeah, I'm 50, but I got it back. That's redemption. And that's what a lot
That's
of people
awesome.
around the world are seeking right now. You
Hmm.
know, just a little
That's
bit of
true.
respect, love, and redemption.
Yeah.
It's time for, and I seen this quote the other day online. It's time for the people that have good hearts to win. It's time.
Mhm. I like that. I agree with you on music. Music is, I have playlists for all my moods. So, it's,
Exactly. That's what's
yeah.
important. Music
Yeah.
can touch your heart no matter where it's at.
Hmm.
Whether you're
And I
going
think,
through a death in the family or a celebration, it's all
yeah,
there.
yeah, that's true. When in 2020, I listened to my sad playlist over and over and over for months because that is when I started this mission. And it was when I was focusing on my own journey and processing my own mental health journey. And I, even though now when I'm happy and I listen to that, I'm like, oh, that's depressing. But when I was in that place, it was the
Right.
only thing that got me through. So it's really
It was
important
fitting.
to
It was
have
fitting for the
something,
moment.
yeah, whether it's music or something else
Yeah,
for
it's
listeners, it's you have to find that thing that can get you through that hard time, for sure.
yeah. You have to
So,
find what works for you. Same thing with, like I said, with the triggers. You got to find what your triggers are, what triggers you to have this anxiety, and learn, like, if I'm putting myself in that situation, either around that person or even at that place, uh,
mhm,
you know, got to
yeah,
learn to don't put yourself in that position.
very
That's
true.
that's the hardest
Very,
thing.
yeah. It takes some time to figure that out, but everything you said, I completely agree with. Um, I want to ask you one last question, and that is, you
Okay.
talk about your experience either being, you've kind of talked a little bit about being part of Scars to Stars already, but talk about when you decided to write your own book or your story, because I know you wrote that before you wrote this chapter. Um, can you describe a little bit about how that affected you mentally, how you prepared for it, how did you, decide that you're going to write it, or whatever you want to talk about around writing? Because everybody that writes in our books is writing something about something hard they've been through. And so it affects you differently than just
Right.
writing something. And so I wonder what that experience was for you.
Well, for me, it was very difficult, to be honest. Something I almost give up on and went back to being just a regular person in society because I didn't I wanted the excitement. I wanted the experience of the publishing process and writing and telling my journey, but I never realized how mentally challenging that would be, where I
Mm,
would just want to walk away from everything that I had been offered, from books to podcasts to this movie and TV series and all those stuff. Um, Many, many times I wanted to give up. And then I kept hearing that voice inside of me saying, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Then also I had voices in my head that would say, okay, where's the book? You've been talking about this for 3 years. Because
mm,
originally my book was supposed to be released in 2020. And it took me another 3 years prolonging it, trying to talk myself out of it, going through loopholes of the publishing company, learning the process, and uh, not even knowing how to fit the dimensions of my cover and all. But it was a great experience to learn that. And I'm sure first time authors in this book uh, are going to experience the same thing with the excitement and the, the launch of the book.
mhm,
For me, mentally, uh, I found it to be harder to write my story than to be on several hundreds of podcasts or to even film a commercial based on my life, or even up to the point where I read the movie script about my life and said, wow, this guy's got a messed up life. And then I said, whoa, that's me. So you got to have fun with it too. But it was very, very difficult to write something so personal that's about my life, and to have the courage to tell everything this time, instead of taking the shortcuts and saying, well, maybe I should leave this part out. And that was another thing that I wavered back and forth for 3 years, 4 years now, to say, okay, should I leave this part out? Should I leave this part out? I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to share my story on a level that people can relate to it. And if they can't, they can say, whoa, okay, I'm never going to treat my child like this. Because there's no excuse for ever, ever, ever having violence against a child. Never. There's not. And I make that very clear in my book, and I make it very clear in my chapter that I just recently sent.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
it's a very difficult process. When it's personal, I found it more challenging because I was alone to write with my own thoughts, and I was like, "Whoa, music's not going to save me this time," you know.
Yeah.
And then I come up with so many different ways I wanted to do the book. Like, okay, where do I start? Where do I finish? Where do I put the chapters? I was more excited about the journey than the story. The journey through the processing of publishing and being an author and getting that first, print copy of the book, and just be blown away, like, wow, okay, this sense of not only belonging, but this sense of like, I'm helping other people because I'm here to serve. That's for the rest of my life. That's what I've dedicated my life to. I'm here to serve. So all those parts were easy because I knew my mission. But to sit down with your own thoughts and to collaborate with others to write a book like mine, at least, was very challenging. But something that has to be done. It has to be done for the people that have been through it, that don't have a voice or won't speak up. This is our chance to be the voice.
Yes.
It is. It is.
It is. It is. Well, I'm so glad that you accepted my request for you to be in this book.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited for people to read your story, and I'm excited for all of us to get to see the movie when it gets done. That's going to be really exciting. I'm excited for you. You have a lot of really cool stuff going on in your life.
It's really cool and exciting right now. It's a little draining, but if this is your mission in life, you realize, like, okay, there's going to be some days that there's going to be more anxiety because of the PTSD than others. That's when you need to just take a mental break. Everybody needs to take that mental break. If it's an hour listening to music, that's what you need. Then I highly recommend you do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chad, for being here, and for our listeners. Our book launch event is going to be on September 22nd. And it's going to be, we'll have a registration link with all these videos on our podcast and on our YouTube channel and on our social media. And also, we'll have a registration link that we'll send out to everybody. So we hope to see you there on September 22nd. And I can't wait to launch our third book.
Absolutely. It's going to be very, very exciting for a lot of people. And, like I said, I just recommend we all get this message out. We get this book out to as many people as we can save and help, and whatever needs serve them. It's just a great message. And with this many authors in it, you can't miss out on this.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I look forward